Hi everyone, this video is about topic 10, coordination, subtopic 10.1, nervous system. Okay, so under this topic, you are going to learn about the subtopic, learning outcomes, state the organization of the nervous system, CNO1. Okay, so basically under this subtopic, okay, you are learning about this nervous system which perform the three overlapping function. Number one, okay, is a sensory input. Okay, also functioning for integration and as well as the motor input. Okay, so nervous system involve transmission of impulse from one receptor to an effector specifically. Okay, next. There are two types of nervous system. Okay, number one is the central nervous system, also can be known as CNS, and number two is the peripheral nervous system, which also can be known as PNS. Okay, so overall you can see this is what teacher mentioned just now. Okay, the sensory input, the three overlapping functioning of nervous system. Okay, number two is the integration. Okay, number three is the output, and together, okay, it involves the CNS, central nervous system, okay, and as well as the PNS, the peripheral nervous system. Okay, so this is the flow chart to show the organization of our nervous system. Okay, like teacher mentioned just now, nervous system is actually can be break into two types. Okay, CNS, central nervous system, which consists our priceless brain and as well as the spinal cord, and peripheral nervous system, which involve the two pathway. Okay, number one is the sensory pathway, and number two is the second motor pathway. And under motor pathway, okay, you can see it break up into two types. Okay, what we call is a voluntary nervous system, or also can be known as somatic. And number two is the involuntary nervous system, which also can be known as autonomic. And under autonomic or under involuntary nervous system, okay, it can be classified into two division. Okay, what we call as a sympathetic division and parasympathetic division. Okay, central nervous. Let's start with our first type, central nervous system. Central nervous system comprises of two important structure, what is called as our brain and also the spinal cord. Okay, so you can see here, okay, the priceless organ brain, okay, which connected to the spinal cord as a central nervous system. Okay, so basically the function of brain where all the message or all the input are analyzed, okay, and also interpret, okay. And next, the second central nervous system involves the spinal cord. Okay, as you can see from this diagram, the spinal cord involved in carries message from the body to the brain. Okay, so all the response messages are then passed from the brain through the spinal cord and to the rest of our body. Okay, so next, the second type of nervous system, what we call is a peripheral nervous system. Okay, under peripheral nervous system, it consists of a neuron or nerve cell that interconnect the brain to all parts of the body. Okay, such as the body muscle, the sensory organs, and as well as the organ build system. Okay, so how this peripheral nervous system divide, okay, they involve two types of neurons, what we call is the afferent neuron, okay, and the efferent neuron. Okay, the afferent neuron is actually referring to the some peripheral nerve cell or the neuron which collect all the information from the body, and it will transmit this impulse towards the CNS, which is brain and our spinal cord. Okay, for efferent neurons, okay, which is involve other peripheral neurons, it will transmit all the information away from the CNS. Okay, so these are the two types of nerve cell or the neurons. Okay, next, okay, from this diagram you can observe, okay, what teacher mentioned just now about the sensory neuron and as well as the motor neuron, which will transmit the impulse to the CNS. Okay, you can see here this is the spinal cord that acts as a CNS. Okay, next, let's discuss the structure on knowing the neuron. Okay, our nerve cell. Okay, basically neuron is a basic functional unit of the nervous system that carry messages throughout the nervous system. Okay, referring to this nerve cell of the neuron, okay, this nerve cell is highly specialized cell that are able to generate and transmit nerve impulses. Okay, so let's see what is the function of the neuron and what are the parts or what is the structure of the nerve cell, okay, or what we call as a neuron. Okay, new messages in our body, okay, is actually in the form of what we call as a electrical signals, okay, and we use the specific terms as a impulse, okay. So when talking about the structure of neuron or the nerve cell, it basically consists of three main parts. So what are the three main parts? Okay, the first one is the cell body. Okay, number one is the dendrite, and number three is the axon. Okay, so these are the three main parts of our neuron or our nerve cell, which is very specialized. Okay, so basically this is the uh, diagram to show the general structure of a motor neuron, where just now you can identify, like teacher mentioned just now, the cell body, okay, the axon, and as well as the dendrite. Okay, next. Basically, the structure of neuron, the axon of most neurons are covered with a lipid layer. Okay, teacher repeat, lipid layer, what we call is a myelin sheath. Okay, so and what is the function of myelin sheath? Okay, the myelin sheath is actually insulate and as well as speed up the transmission of action potential through the axon. Okay, that is it's important of having a myelin sheath. Okay, so next, talking about structure of neuron. Okay, in the peripheral nervous system, like teacher mentioned just now, okay, class, the afferent neuron and the efferent neuron. Okay, all the myelin sheath is produced by one cell that known as Schwann cell. Okay, which surround the axon. And between the myelin sheath, okay, it consists of gaps, or also can be known as the nodes. And these nodes are known as the nodes of Rambier. So these are all the important structure of neuron that you must able to recognize. Okay, class. So teacher again shows the structure of motor neuron, which you can detect. Okay, the structure of node of Rambier, the Schwann cell, and as well as the myelin sheath. Okay, so overall, when you observe or when you identify the structure of neuron, okay, basically you can take this. Number one, dendrite, cell body. Two, axon. Three, okay, axon terminal. Four, nodes of Rambier. Five, such one cell. Six, and myelin sheath. Seven. Okay, so this is overall the basic structure of motor neuron that you must able to understand. Okay, next, what is actually neurons involved? Okay, neurons are supported structurally and functionally by supporting cell that called neuroglia. Okay, so beside neuron or nerve cell also have a supporting cell. Okay, so this neuroglia, okay, nourish and support and as well regulate the functioning of neurons. Okay, and the most two important neuronal cell that help, okay, or functioning to supporting the nerve cell is known as Schwann cells, which just now teacher mentioned, it produce myelin sheath in the PNS, okay, which is afferent and the efferent neuron, and another cell that we call as oligodendrocytes. Okay, so oligodendrocytes is another supporting cells that will produce the myelin sheath in the CNS. Okay, which means our brain and our spinal cord. Okay, next. Okay, actually, thanks to God, okay, we have three types of neuron. Okay, what are the three neurons? Okay, the first one, like teacher mentioned just now, okay, for the PNS, we call it the sensory neurons, or also can be known as afferent neurons. Okay, these neurons carry impulses from the sense organ, okay, which also can be known as a receptor, to the CNS. Okay, what is the CNS just now, class? Okay, from the classification, CNS include the brain, okay, our priceless brain, and as well as our spinal cord. Okay, how it works? So the receptor, okay, the sense organ or the receptor will detect, okay, all the changes either the external or as well as the internal, and all these messengers will transmit or send the information to the CNS to integrate, like teacher mentioned just now, in the form of what we call as a electrical wave. Okay, and we call the specific term which is impulse, okay, through the afferent neurons. Okay, that is the first type. Okay, the second type, okay, what we call as a motor neuron, and just now you have already discovered the structure of the diagram of this motor neuron. Okay, which we also can be called it's an efferent neuron. Okay, atau efferent nerve cell. Okay, so like afferent neuron also carry or transmit impulses, but the pathway is from the brain and the spinal cord, okay, to the muscle or glands. Okay, so muscles or glands also can be known as an effector. Okay, so there are two types of effector, class. Okay, which in response to impulses. Okay, and muscles. What is the responses? Okay, if the muscles, it will contract, or if the glands, it will secrete. Okay, that is how the motor neuron or the efferent create effect to the muscles and the glands. Okay, next, the last types of neuron, what we call is an interneuron. Okay, interneurons is another nerve cell or neurons which connect the sensory neuron and the motor neuron. Okay, and it will transmit or carry impulses between these two neurons. That's why, okay, we call it an interneuron. Okay, so basically these interneuron are found entirely within the CNS, okay, within our control nervous system, which is brain and spinal cord. Okay, next, so these are all the diagram that shows the type of neuron, okay, which involves sensory neuron, okay, which transmit the conduction of impulse, okay, to the CNS, and where this, like teacher mentioned just now, the interneuron, basically, okay, we can find in the CNS, and after that, from the CNS, okay, the next neuron is the motor neuron or the efferent neuron. Okay, so after you have done knowing these all three types of neuron, now teacher would like to introduce you to one uh, very important concept, okay, where under nervous system you need to learn about these two concept, what we call as autonomic nervous system and also somatic nervous system. Okay, so from this diagram you can observe that from the CNS, okay, the CNS and also which involve the internal environment and as well as the external environment, both environment, okay, the neuron will detect the changes, especially the sensory neuron. Okay, so autonomic nervous system, okay, as Lita mentioned earlier, this nervous system will control the involuntary responses, okay, of all the internal organs and as well all the glands. And for the somatic nervous system, it will control the voluntary responses, okay, which always most likely it will involve the skeletal muscles. Okay, so that is what the voluntary responses. Okay, if you observe this autonomic nervous system, basically you can observe the cerebellum, okay, the medulla oblongata, the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, as well as the cerebral hemisphere. So why teacher highlight the medulla oblongata? Okay, as you all know, okay, this is where, okay, the hypothalamus and the medulla oblongata is actually where mainly regulated the autonomic nervous system in our body. Okay, so autonomic nervous system consists of two components, okay, which is known as sympathetic and parasympathetic. Okay, and both sympathetic and parasympathetic, okay, actually class when ANS consists of two components, okay, but for a parasympathetic, from earlier from the flow chart that teacher showed just now, okay, you will understand that this parasympathetic having two type of nerves, okay, or two type of nerve cell, which is known as a preganglionic neuron and postganglionic neuron. Okay, so basically you can see from this diagram, okay, these both presynaptic and autonomic neuron and also postsynaptic autonomic neuron, okay, both of the organs inverted by the NS receive both sympathetic and parasympathetic nerve fibers, where the two systems are antagonistic to one another. Okay, so teacher would like to you all to highlight this one class, ganglion. Okay, so what is mean by ganglion? Okay, ganglion is referring to the collection of nerve cell bodies. Again, teacher repeat. Okay, referring to the nerve cell bodies enclosed in the connective tissue that lying along a nerve. Okay, so from this diagram, you can see this is what teacher means by ganglion. Okay, so what is ganglion? Teacher repeat. Ganglion is referring to a collection of a nerve cell bodies, okay, which enclose in the connective tissue. So you can see here, class, it's showing all the cell bodies of the nerve cell or the neuron, okay, is enclosed by the connective tissue. Alright, okay, so that's a ganglion. Right, autonomic nervous system, okay, earlier like teacher mentioned, this is the flow chart where you can see, okay, it is divided into two, sympathetic and parasympathetic division. And for parasympathetic division, okay, it contain the both contain the preganglionic neuron and as well as the postganglionic neuron. Right, okay. So what's actually this preganglionic neuron? Okay, so from this diagram you can observe, class, CNS is our control nervous system and PNS is our peripheral nervous system. Okay, so when teacher mentioned about pre means, okay, all the cell body. Okay, we are referring to the cell body, class. Okay, when mentioned about this neuron, we are referring to the specific structure of the neuron. What we call as a cell body. Okay, so preganglionic neuron is actually referring to the nerve cell, which the cell body in the brain, which consists the cell body in the brain or in the spinal cord. Okay, and when referring to the axon, okay, the axon is myelinated that extend to the autonomic ganglion. Teacher repeat the class. Okay, so preganglionic neuron, okay, it is myelinated, okay, that extend to the autonomic ganglion here. Okay, so this is the autonomic ganglion. Okay, that is pre. Okay, now what is post? Okay, so post is actually referring to the cell body of the neuron which lies outside the CNS. Okay, so as you can see here, okay, this is the cell body which lies outside of the CNS. But this autonomic ganglion, okay, as you can see here, okay, it in the ganglion, enclosed by the membrane. Okay, so the axon of this postganglionic neuron is unmyelinated. Okay, unmyelinated, where that this axon is terminate in a vesicle effector. So this is teacher mentioned just now. Okay, so what are the effector? So the effector like in our cardiac muscle, okay, smooth muscle, the gland, the adipose tissue. So this is how the two neuron involved. Okay, alright. So basically, how the antagonistic effect between these two sympathetic and parasympathetic. Okay, so talking about heartbeat, sympathetic will accelerate, okay, whereas the parasympathetic will slow our heartbeat. Okay, in terms of blood pressure, sympathetic will increase our blood pressure, whereas the parasympathetic will reduce our blood pressure. And in terms of ventilation rate, okay, so sympathetic will increase the ventilation rate, whereas parasympathetic will decrease the ventilation rate. Okay, so this antagonistic effect, okay, will result from different neurotransmitters release. Okay, so teacher hope, okay, when we learn about the nervous system, okay, these are all the important terms that you must memorize. Okay, class. So another term that teacher would like to highlight here is the neurotransmitter. Okay, so the different in terms of neurotransmitter that release at the end of the neuron or nerve cell of the neuron. Okay, so let we explore. When teacher mentioned about preganglionic fibers or neuron, okay, which involve both nervous system, parasympathetic and sympathetic, this preganglionic will secrete or will produce the neurotransmitter, what we call as a acetylcholine. Okay, okay, and so from this diagram you can see a class, the A and S, like teacher mentioned earlier. For sympathetic and parasympathetic, it will secrete what we call as the neurotransmitter, which is acetylcholine. Okay, so how about the postganglionic fibers or postganglionic neuron? Okay, so this postganglionic neuron, it will secrete noradrenaline. Okay, noradrenaline, whereas the sympathetic nerve endings most release acetylcholine. Okay, so you can observe your class. Okay, the there are no epinephrine and just now teacher mentioned what class? Acetylcholine. Right? Okay. So basically, what is the function of sympathetic nervous system? Okay, when teacher mentioned about increased heartbeat, okay, or inhibit our salivary gland secretion, okay, or dilates our pupils. So these are all under the concept what we call as a sympathetic nervous system. Okay, actually, sympathetic nervous system, okay, preparing our body for the strenuous physical activity under the stressful situation, or what we can say is a threatening situation. Okay, so under sympathetic nervous system, our body will respond often to refer what we call as a fight or flight. Okay, fight or flight response, because the sympathetic nervous system division prepare our body to fight against or fly from a threat. Okay, so that is basically sympathetic. So how about the parasympathetic? Okay, parasympathetic nervous system maintains the normal functioning of the body, okay, under the non-threatening situation. And this is important to help our body to keep body in relax, okay, and as well as an unstressed condition. Okay, what are the example for this parasympathetic nervous system class? Okay, it is like the constrict of the pupils, okay, stimulates our salivary gland secretion and also reduce our heartbeat. Okay, so this is all the common example. Okay, okay, this is the whole diagram to show how our CNS, okay, our brain and as well as our spinal cord and also our PNS, which involve the preganglion and the postganglion, okay, which under group under sympathetic division and also parasympathetic division. Okay, so last but not least, okay, the second type, okay, that teacher would like you to learn about is the somatic nervous system. Okay, we mentioned somatic nervous system. It contains sensory neurons, okay, which means the afferent neuron transmitting all the information for the PNS, okay, the peripheral sensory receptor to the CNS, and then motor neuron which send nerve impulse to the skeletal muscle. Okay, basically for somatic nervous system, this is where we can control. Okay, you can control the voluntary movement under conscious control. Okay, so my last slide, okay, is actually you can put it this sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, you can figure out a few differences between these two nervous system. Okay, class. So let's start with number one, the origin of neuron. Okay, for sympathetic, the origin is from the thoracic and as well from the lumbar region of the CNS. Whereas the parasympathetic, okay, emerges from the cranial and sacral region of the CNS. So this is the first difference where this nerve cell emerge. Okay, the origin. Okay, then talking about the ganglion. Okay, so for sympathetic, all the ganglion is really close to the spinal cord, whereas for parasympathetic, okay, the ganglion is more close to the effector. Okay, which one is more longer? Okay, in terms of length. Okay, so sympathetic, when talking about the preganglionic, okay, it has short preganglionic but long postganglionic. Vice versa from the parasympathetic. Okay, parasympathetic has long preganglionic fibers but short postganglionic fibers. Okay, so if you want to understand better, you must refer to the diagram. Okay, from the earlier that teacher shows just now. Okay, then talking about numbers of fiber. Okay, under sympathetic, it involves numerous number, whereas for the parasympathetic, it only involves a few ganglionic fibers. Okay, when we study about the distribution, okay, this nerve this nerve or this fiber, sympathetic, okay, the distribution more in the innervate of wide area, okay. But whereas the preganglionic fibers innervate a restricted region in our body, okay. And area of influence, okay, sympathetic will the effect will spread out, okay. Whereas for the parasympathetic, the effect is localized, okay, very specific. Okay, and last but not least, like teacher mentioned just now, the neurotransmitter which involved is different. Okay, so for sympathetic, then the neurotransmitter involved is the noradrenaline, okay, which released by at the effector. Whereas for the parasympathetic, the acetylcholine will release at the E effector. Okay, and then what is the general effect class? So the sympathetic will increase the metabolite and lower the sensory threshold, whereas the parasympathetic restore the sensory threshold to normal level and decrease the metabolite level. Okay, and as the overall effect, sympathetic will involve excitatory hemostatic effect, whereas for the parasympathetic it will involve the inhibitory hemostatic effect. Okay, and the last point for the difference between this sympathetic and the parasympathetic, okay, the condition when this sympathetic active, okay, it will be when this sympathetic active, okay, it will be dominant during under condition danger, okay, and also the stress activity. But for parasympathetic, okay, it will dominant during rest, okay, and as well as to control our routine body activities. Okay, so I think that's all for this video. Thank you. See you for the next video. Thank you. Bye.